The 80s gave us blockbusters, but not every gem got its due. These 10 films flopped on release. We're talking about a masterpiece mismarketed into oblivion, a thriller killed by one bad casting choice, and the Oscar winner its own distributor tried to bury. Underrated, unforgettable, absolutely worth revisiting. In the early 80s, the world's biggest movie star gave one of his best performances, and audiences punished him for it. The film was The Border. At the peak of his fame, between The Shining and Terms of Endearment, a Jack Nicholson picture barely breaking even was a serious failure. Universal Pictures put up $22 million. It grossed just $28.5 million. The problem was expectations. Marketing sold a gritty thriller, but director Tony Richardson, an Oscar winner known for British realism, delivered a bleak, sweat-soaked tragedy. Audiences who came for the unhinged madman of Cuckoo's Nest got a quiet, morally conflicted border agent in El Paso instead. Nicholson's performance is brilliant, understated, simmering with internal conflict, not exploding with it. The exact opposite of the Jack persona. Tonally, it's a cynical holdover from the 70s, a story about institutional rot, completely out of step with the decade's demand for escapism. One of Nicholson's most overlooked and courageous roles, a superstar undone by his own fame. A fantastic, grounded performance from a superstar that audiences flatly rejected. In the mid-80s, the infamous Cannon Group was known for cheap action schlock. But in 1986, they accidentally funded a genuinely brilliant, nasty piece of work, John Frankenheimer's 52 Pickup. It was a commercial catastrophe, grossing just $1.5 million in the US. Vanished from theaters almost immediately. For Cannon, this wasn't a flop. It was unmarketable. The film is a scummy, brutal neo-noir, one of the most faithful Elmore Leonard adaptations ever filmed. Roy Scheider plays a successful businessman whose life implodes when blackmailers expose his affair. This is pure 80s sleaze, grimy, sadistic violence that pushed even the R-rating limits. A thriller with no heroes, an authentically bitter soul, falling into a marketing black hole. Too nasty for the mainstream, too complex for grindhouse crowds. Uncut Leonard. Far more cynical than slicker 90s adaptations. A clear forerunner to films like Fargo, showing a successful man undone by a single mistake. A top-tier Frankenheimer thriller, simply too dirty and vicious for anyone to stomach. With The Pope of Greenwich Village, the studio tried to sell audiences a Scorsese-style gangster flick. The director delivered a quiet tragedy instead. The result, a legendary box office dud. An $8 million MGM production, it pulled in just over $7 million domestically. The trailer promised a mob war, another Mean Streets, but audiences got a talky, atmospheric character piece. Mickey Rourke and Eric Roberts star as cousins, Charlie, the charismatic dreamer, and Polly, the pathetic schemer who drags them into trouble with the mob. Instead of high-octane thrills, the film is a melancholy story about loyalty and failure, with a downbeat ending that was a tough sell. The film's cult legacy rests entirely on the explosive chemistry of its leads. Rourke at his peak. Roberts giving a frantic, Oscar-nominated performance. Critics loved it. The public, misled by marketing, stayed away. Worth the price of admission for two actors at the absolute peak of their powers, before their careers went off the rails. Sometimes a single casting decision can torpedo an entire film. For a perfect example, look no further than the 1987 thriller, The Bedroom Window. Legendary producer Dino De Laurentiis put up $8.5 million, but the film was a box office bomb, grossing just $12.6 million worldwide and losing money. Writer-director Curtis Hanson crafted a smart homage to Hitchcock. A man lies to the police to protect his lover and gets tangled in a web of his own making. The fatal flaw? Casting one of the decade's most recognizable comedic faces as the lead. Steve Guttenberg, star of Police Academy and Cocoon, couldn't carry a dark, serious role. Every tense moment weighed down by his goofy persona. The film is a fascinating what-if, a dry run for the intricate plotting Hanson would later perfect in LA Confidential. You can see the skeleton of a great thriller, but it became a textbook Hollywood lesson. The wrong star can sink a picture before it even sails. A clever Hitchcockian thriller, sunk by a fatal piece of miscasting. Most romantic comedies are a fantasy. In 1981, Albert Brooks made one so painfully real it confirmed he was a genius who would never be a superstar. Modern Romance. A small Columbia Pictures release on a tiny budget, it grossed just $3.1 million. Not a disaster, but proof Brooks was a critical darling, not a box office draw. He plays a film editor pathologically obsessed with his on-again, off-again girlfriend, driving them both insane with jealousy. But this isn't a comedy of punchlines. It's a painfully realistic autopsy of a toxic relationship. The humor comes from cringe-inducing recognition. It's the kind of film that makes you laugh at self-sabotage and then feel terrible. Impossible for a mass audience to embrace. Brooks's neurotic, deconstructive comedy was decades ahead of its time, a genre only mainstreamed later by shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm. One of the most accurate, and therefore excruciating comedies ever made about love and jealousy. In 1987, one of America's most famous playwrights, David Mamet, decided to direct a film, and in the process, he broke every rule of the Hollywood thriller. The result? His masterpiece, House of Games. A low-budget, $4.5 million affair from Orion Classics, never meant for wide release. It grossed just $2.6 million. The movie is pure Mamet, a psychiatrist pulled into the world of high-stakes grifters, the story unfolding with his clipped, staccato dialogue and a cold, clinical tone. It plays like a chess match. No shootouts, no car chases, no explosions. Just the psychology of the con itself, the machinery of deception made visible. Mamet turned language and manipulation into the stars of the film, and in the process, he built the template for every modern con movie, from The Grifters to Ocean's 11. A perfect cinematic puzzle. It's the film every modern con movie rips off, and it's still smarter than all of them. In 1983, a small TV movie was considered so powerful and cinematic that Paramount Pictures released it in theaters. That decision created one of the decade's most haunting forgotten films, Testament. Originally made for PBS's American Playhouse on a budget under $1 million, festival buzz drew a theatrical run. Despite a Best Actress Oscar nomination for Jane Alexander, it was a commercial ghost, grossing just $1.5 million. This isn't about the spectacle of bombs. It's the quiet, agonizing aftermath in a small suburban town. We watch a mother try to hold her family together as radiation and societal collapse slowly claim them. Timing was its biggest problem. Released the same year as The Day After, a sensational graphic TV event, Testament was intimate, poetic, unbearably sad. Too quiet to compete with the spectacle. The Day After shocked audiences, Testament quietly devastated them. A quietly apocalyptic film, completely drowned out by its louder, more famous cousin. One of America's fiercest independent filmmakers made a sports movie with no heroes and no victory. In 1988, that brilliant failure was John Sayles' 8 Men Out. Sayles delivered his passion project for just $6 million. Despite rave reviews, it struck out at the box office, grossing only $5.7 million and failing to recoup its budget. The film meticulously dramatizes the 1919 Black Sox scandal, when underpaid Chicago White Sox players threw the World Series. But this isn't a triumphant sports story. It's dense, cynical, a deep look at institutional corruption. The massive ensemble cast includes a young John Cusack and Charlie Sheen, yet the complex historical narrative was a tough sell. Audiences wanted a simple victory. Sayles gave them a history lesson. Pure Sayles, a director who built a career outside the studio system, a story about class and corruption set in the world of baseball, a fact most of the public missed. One of the best baseball movies ever made, that only baseball historians seem to remember. In 1983, a studio distributor disliked the film so much they barely released it. That film went on to win 2 Academy Awards, including Best Actor. The picture was Tender Mercies. Made for just $4.5 million, the studio gave it an almost invisible promotional push. The result? Despite Oscars for Best Actor and Best Original Screenplay, it limped to only $8.4 million at the box office. Written by playwright Horton Foote, it's a masterclass in subtlety. Robert Duvall plays Max Sledge, a washed-up country singer rebuilding his life in a small Texas town. That's the entire plot. Minimal dialogue, a patient, observational pace, a story about grace, utterly out of step with the flashy 80s. Duvall did his own singing, delivering a career-best performance. The film's naturalistic style later became a touchstone for the 90s indie movement. Proof that a quiet story can carry immense power, even if the studio had no idea what to do with it. One of the greatest and most forgotten Oscar-winning performances of all time. When the director of The Shining calls your movie the most terrifying film he's ever seen, you've made a masterpiece. That's what happened with George Sluizer's 1988 original, The Vanishing. A Dutch-French co-production on a shoestring, it got a tiny US art house release in 1990. Box office? Negligible. Critical reputation? Spread like wildfire. The premise is chilling. A man's girlfriend disappears. 3 years later, her abductor offers answers. But only if he experiences it himself. This isn't about jump scares or gore. It's cold. Clinical. A thriller about obsession, ending in one of the most soul-destroying finales in cinema history. Stanley Kubrick himself called it a masterpiece, admitted the ending was so terrifying he was scared to meet him. Then Hollywood stepped in, remade it, gave it a happy ending, proved they never understood the original's genius. A perfect thriller that ends with an abyss. So bleak, you'll only recommend it to people you secretly dislike. For more forgotten gems like this, subscribe to VintageVerse. What's an 80s masterpiece I need to cover next? Drop your suggestions below. I'm ready to dig up the next hidden classic.